Lisa Page has broken her silence. She gave a reason for doing it. I'll tell you the real reason she's doing it. Joe Biden says he likes kids sitting on his lap, and also he sucked his wife's finger in public. I wish I was making that up. Finally, feminism. I'll fast forward to the future and show you how it ends. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Lisa Page is back, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who've forgotten the name, allow us to do a quick little recap on who Lisa Page is. Lisa Page was a former attorney, a former FBI attorney. She was the one who got caught up in a little tryst with FBI agent Peter Strzok. We all remember the text messages they swapped back and forth. If you do not, I'll recap those in just a second. But what is all this? What's the important part of all this? Well, there are investigations going on right now about potential improprieties at the FBI and the DOJ. What are those improprieties? Well, they decided to spy. The FBI decided to spy on Donald Trump, on then candidate Donald Trump when he was running to be president of the United States. And understand something. That's a very, 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 very big deal and a big decision to make. Democrat President Barack Obama looks at a warrant or looks at a potential DOJ FBI investigation, and for him to say to himself, you know, we actually should wiretap my Republican opponent, even though he wasn't running against Obama. We should wiretap the Republican who's going to be the nominee. That's a huge deal. You have the FBI tapping phones, running counterintelligence operations against your political opponent. It's a humongous deal. And Barack Obama would have known that's a huge deal. The DOJ would have known that's a huge deal. Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, James Comey, John Brennan, all these people would know it is a big deal for a sitting president to use the full force of the federal government against your political opponent. That is Banana Republic stuff. So, obviously, you'd want to cross your T's and dot your I's, right? So the FBI had to go to the FISA court. Don't let your eyes glaze over on me. This is important. The FISA court is that court that determines whether or not you can open up an investigation and begin spying on an American citizen. Now, this court has several problems with it. I can't stand it anyway. It has over 95% approval rate, which means they're just rubber stamping approvals, but that's another matter. The investigations going on right now are basically looking into what did they show the FISA court that would allow that would let the FISA court look at these documents and say, you know what? Actually, you should investigate Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's people were screaming, this is biased. It was an illegal investigation. The Democrats are all screaming, no, we were just doing our due diligence. Just some nonpartisan government employees out there looking out for the people. Hey, I'm just doing my job. It's just the FBI. Donald Trump was a criminal, or at least we thought he was. We had to look into it. So the motivation behind these FBI people and the information these FBI people gave to the FISA court, those are the two things that matter the most. Who was doing the investigating? What did they show the FISA court in order to get the FISA warrant, which they got? Well, now, back to Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok was the man heading up the investigation into Donald Trump. Also the man heading up the investigation into the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Don't ask me how those two worlds possibly got combined. Nevertheless, they gave it to Mr. Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok, who was carrying on an affair with Lisa Page, then FBI lawyer Lisa Page. Well, we would want these two to be, nonpartisan, right? Down the line. Just an FBI agent just going by the book. Only it doesn't look like they were going by the book because we have text messages. The text messages we do have, by the way. Keep in mind, Robert Mueller deleted 19,000 of them. But the text messages we do have between Page and Strzok, it doesn't look like they were nonpartisan. We have this one from Lisa Page. This is from March 4th, 2016. Quote, God, Trump is a loathsome human being, end quote. Yes, that sounds nonpartisan. Another Lisa Page text, August 6, 2016, quote, Peter, You are meant to stay where you are to protect our country from this menace. To protect our country from this menace. Ladies and gentlemen, does that sound like an FBI, Strzok and Page? Does that sound like people just crossing the T's and dotting the I's? We're just following the law. Hey, look, we're just going to travel down the evidence path and see where it leads. Or does that sound like two people who were on a mission to stop Trump? It doesn't sound good, does it? Oh, she went on. There's more. Lisa Page on August 8th, 2016, quote, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And this may be the most damaging exchange that we currently have our hands on, because old Peter Strzok responded and said, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Wait, what? We'll stop it? They're going to try to stop Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. So they're not just investigating. They're not just trying to figure out what's reality. They're not just following the law. They seem like two people with a political agenda. And ladies and gentlemen, these are not two guys guarding a radio tower in Anchorage, Alaska. These are high up officials in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If they choose to get political, if they choose to, under Democrat President Barack Obama, go after Republican candidate Donald Trump, that is, without question, if they did it illegally, without question, that is the biggest political scandal in the history of the United States of America. It is. And again, I will reiterate, if someone is found guilty of that, don't give me some, patsy. Don't give me some low-level guy that you offer up as a sacrificial lamb and slap him on the wrist. And, we give him 20 hours of community service. If the federal government, if people under Democrat President Barack Obama and maybe Obama himself are found guilty of using the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a political weapon, people belong in federal prison. It is that big of a deal. You must set an example that this never happens again. So this is what we'll get, though, when we have all this report coming out, because the report's coming out from Horowitz soon. He's got one coming out on December 9th. Remember, there are multiple reports. We have one from Durham. We have one from Barr. There are multiple reports, but one we know is coming out December 9th. What did Barack Obama know? When did he know it? Because Barack Obama's fans will all say this. Well, he didn't know. I mean, he's not going to follow everything, right? Look, it's an FBI investigation. We don't expect the president. The president didn't know. The president didn't know. Only we have another one. Lisa Page texted Peter Strzok on September 9th, 2016, quote, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Barack Obama was POTUS. This is Lisa Page in a very candid moment saying in black and white, he wants to be updated. So let us set aside this notion that Barack Obama, he's just up there being the man. He can't be expected to know. Oh, no. He wanted to be updated. And of course he would be updated, ladies and gentlemen. Don't pee on my foot and tell me it's raining. Barack Obama would absolutely know if you're going to open up a counterintelligence investigation into your Republican opponent, you're not doing that without the sign-off of the President of the United States of America. Somebody brought that into Barack Obama's office, laid it on his desk, and got permission to do that. You don't perform an operation like that without a big CYA from the man himself, and Barack Obama was the only one who could provide that CYA. There's more. So Lisa Page comes out with this article, right? It's in the Daily Beast, which tells you all you need to know about it. She's just nonpartisan Lisa Page, just crossing the T's and doing her job. Only she publishes an article in the Daily Beast. It's out, and it said, quote, honestly, his demeaning fake orgasm was really the straw that broke the camel's back. By the way, I hope that's the last time I ever have to use that word on this show, ever. She goes on. And when the president accuses you of treason by name, despite the fact that I know there's no fathomable way that I have committed any crime at all, let alone treason, he's still somebody in a position that could actually do something about it. She continues, I'm thinking I know I'm a federal employee, but I retain my First Amendment rights, so I'm really not at all worried about it. Now, what was she talking about? Donald Trump did a rally back in October where he did a little breathless lover routine as he read off the text messages I read to you in the beginning. So was Lisa Page coming out there today just to defend her good name? She watched that rally from a month ago. She watched that rally and she had to come out and say something. She couldn't allow the president to define. No, ladies and gentlemen. There is such a thing in every major public industry, whether it be show business, politics, whatever it is. That thing is called getting out in front of the story. Somebody leaked to Lisa Page or leaked to her people that there is some damaging information to her in one of the reports that is coming out. I guarantee that is the truth. And we already know they are doing a criminal investigation currently of a, quote, FBI person who altered a document in order to obtain the FISA warrant that I already told you was a big, big, big deal to obtain. Was Lisa Page the person who altered that document? I have no idea. But if Lisa Page is out there breaking her silence, as she put it now, after all this time, Lisa Page is out there for a very specific reason, and that reason, I promise you, is not Donald Trump mocking her at a rally from October. Lisa Page is nervous. She's now jumping out ahead of this thing 1 week ahead of time. It's the oldest trick in the book. She jumps out a week ahead of time. You will now, watch this, I'm going to be right again, as I always am. She's now going to be on every cable news show. She's going to be doing a public relations campaign for the next week to try to cement in the minds of the American people that, hey, she's just a public servant, unfairly oppressed by the president. So when this report comes out and it looks bad for Lisa Page, she'll feel like she is ahead of the game. Is that strategy effective? Is getting out in front of the story effective? Well, yes and no. It can be. The problem for Lisa Page is she's going to have to be likable. If you're going to do a public relations campaign on all those cable news shows, you better come off as genuine. You better come off as somebody the American people are rooting for. Can she pull that off? I don't know, but I know this, ladies and gentlemen, charm pays, and she better have a lot of it. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Coming up, we have, I'm not making this up, how cool is this? We have a former CIA station chief on the show. We have Inez Stepman on the show. We have, don't forget, I'm going to give you a preview of the future of what feminists are. All that's coming up soon. Hang on. Well, this is a special treat for me. Actually, it's a special treat for everybody. We have retired CIA station chief Scott Eulinger on the line to talk a little bit about this Lisa Page investigation, Trump fiasco. But first, before we get into any of that, Scott, tell us the James Bond stuff. Tell people what a CIA station chief does.
Well, it's not exactly anything like the Bourne ultimatum or anything like that, but I was an operations officer, so it was my job to live in other countries and identify and recruit sources of information for the U.S. government. So in doing so, I recruited Russians, I recruited Iranians, I recruited some terrorists, some weapons proliferators. So I had a pretty rounded career, mostly in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. I speak Russian, so when it comes to everything from the Steele dossier on up, I'm pretty much an expert on Russian intel.
Oh, that is good stuff. All right, first of all, why don't we just go ahead and start there? The Steele dossier, for everybody who doesn't know, I'm sure most of my viewers do, but the Steele dossier was used by the FBI, and at least in part, to obtain a FISA warrant on Donald Trump. What is the Steele dossier? Where did it come from? What is it?
Yeah, the Steele dossier is a flaming piece of garbage. I write on Newsmax.com about it. People can check out my articles. But I said more than 2 years ago that it was garbage because what it was a former intel officer basically making phone calls into Russia and asking them about the Trump campaign, so to speak. So these were not clandestinely recruited assets. These were people who just received a phone call. So they're de facto mouthpieces of the Putin administration. That's why you recruit clandestine sources, because they hopefully are going to give you the skinny. They're going to tell you what's really going on. I had a lot of liaison relationships. If you go to a liaison meeting with, Russian liaison, they're going to tell you the government line. So the Steele dossier from the get-go was an absolute, Russian way of basically provoking the West. And anyone with any kind of intelligence background could immediately see that for what it was. And if they didn't, they're either stupid or there's something malevolent going on.
Now, explain this to me. I don't want to belabor the point, but this actually fascinates me. What does that mean he was making phone calls into Russia? Who was he making phone calls to? Somebody in the Russian government, regular civilians? Who's he calling? And were they already prepped with Trump lies? What is all this?
That's a good question. We don't know the full story, but we actually did find out some little pieces in the last couple of days. Apparently, Steele himself farmed out some of the phone calls to people who had better Russian than he did. However, I presume he made several phone calls. So he apparently was in representing MI6, maybe in an official capacity in Moscow. So he had some contacts. In other words, he knows a general in the Interior Ministry of Russia, or he knows certain people in the intelligence service. But you're not meeting this guy in a dark alley and giving him a pile of money for him to tell you, by the way, people are working to eliminate Putin or something really sexy and clandestine, which is what we're paid to do. So, in fact, he's making a phone call and saying, by the way, almost like a formal liaison request. And you always have to be careful because these people are working for their government. And I'm sure that Putin and the intelligence services in Russia found out from one guy saying, by the way, this ex-MI6 guy is calling me about Trump. And so I'm sure the Russians sat together in a nice, evil little circle and said, okay, so it seems like the Democratic Party is interested in Trump. So how can we spin this in a way to benefit Mother Russia? So they engaged in a disinformation campaign. So Steele, who's supposed to be a trained intel officer, is either an idiot or basically he knows he's palming off garbage to people and getting well paid for it.
Now, Scott, I have to ask, as much as I love my friends across the pond, MI6, is he working for MI6? Is this an MI6 op? Is he a rogue guy? Is he retired? What?
That's a very good question. He is retired and he was working as as a private citizen, providing intelligence to different people. So he wasn't working in his official capacity. He had left the MI6, same as I have now retired from the CIA and have no relationship with them at this point. But the fact that they found this guy, somehow Fusion GPS had been working with him before and had identified him. He's obviously one of them, wink, wink, knows how the same people. You notice everyone in this, they all know each other, whether it's a Strzok, knows Page, knows the people who work for Fusion GPS. Female senior officer there was married to one of the FBI guys. It's one big swamp, and they all know one another. So somehow he got the green light to do this.
Okay, so where did the dossier go from there? We know we have this guy Steele. He calls into Russia, gets a bunch of bunk information. Now he's got this Steele dossier. How in the world does a Steele dossier go from a former intelligence agent into the hands of the freaking FISA court to get a FISA warrant? How does that happen?
Through absolute abuse of the system and corruption. This report, very poorly sourced, if at all. I mean, basically, it's sourced from the equivalent of a drunk in a bar at 1 a.m. on a Friday night. And so it doesn't meet any kind of a sniff test. But yet people, senior officers in the FBI, used this as raw meat to go in front of the FISA court and say, okay, we have information saying that these guys are involved with the Russians, and we want to be able to listen in on their phone conversations. And that's why Lisa Page and Strzok are starting to show up again, because this Horowitz investigation into FBI practices is hopefully going to be nailing them to the wall for their abuses of power in this whole FISA gate.
Now, what could they do, Scott? I guess I've had this question from a lot of people before of, okay, I understand that they were, they were Trump haters. Maybe they're Hillary fans. Who knows what the real story is behind it? But let's say they wanted to try to take down Trump, or they really wanted to do something nefarious. What kind of power would Page or Strzok or both of them together actually have to affect this process?
Well, I guess I think that they had a role in perhaps the FISA approval, and they were basically just out digging up dirt for people and on people. And in fact, the very existence of them asking questions was spun by the media to show that, oh, well, if the FBI is going around asking questions, then obviously someone in the Trump campaign did something wrong. So the very existence of an organization, of an investigation, makes them look guilty. And that was certainly the way the media spun it.
Now, this is probably going to be just asking for your opinion on something, because this wasn't obviously probably what you did. But in my mind, if you're going to open up an investigation like this on a political opponent, whether that be Republican or Democrat, I have a very hard time believing, Scott, that this thing gets off the ground without President Barack Obama saying you're allowed to get this thing off the ground. I just know the general cover your own rear end nature of politics, of law enforcement, obviously, of the military, whatever it may be. Everybody wants the sign off of the man up above, especially when you're doing something that might be a little bit dangerous. Do you believe that there's any chance Barack Obama didn't know? Hey, I just found out about this in the papers.
No, no, Jesse. I mean, there has to absolutely, he had to have known at some point, maybe after the fact, but his chosen people were acting on his behalf, and maybe he didn't want to know about it, but they were empowered to do things to protect perhaps the president. So that kind of happened. And to make you understand how this whole thing is so strange. Remember, I was in the CIA. I worked for them for an entire career. I was overseas for 12 years. If someone had asked me, I mean, I have been turned down I wanted to, for example, obtain some information on somebody who was a foreign national. And I actually was told no by Washington because that individual, a foreign national, had briefly worked, this is maybe 8 years ago, had briefly worked for a U.S. company. So talk about risk aversion. They wouldn't even give me permission to approach or listen in on this guy because of his possible association years earlier with an American company. So now let's put it in this perspective. So now you ask me, okay, Scott, I want you to use your powers to target not only an American citizen, but someone involved in a presidential campaign. Now, my reaction as a trained officer and as somebody who just doesn't want to wind up in Leavenworth is going to be absolute shock. I mean, I am not going to want to touch something like that with a 10-foot pole. I want nothing to do with it. And so the fact that what we now know about FISAgate and all, the fact that this was put into motion clearly shows that this was done at a very high level, such that all the people below were like, okay, they've got my back, and in fact, they want me to do this, and in fact, this is going to be some kind of career milestone if I do this. And that's really terrifying.
It is terrifying. You wouldn't even want to put it into motion. Apparently, reading the text messages, they were very excited to put it into motion, which tells you all you need to know about how covered they thought they were. Retired CIA Station Chief Scott Uehlinger, thank you so much for making us all a little bit smarter today.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Coming up, Joe Biden sucked on his wife's fingers at a campaign rally. On my life, I'm not making this up. I'll show you in a second. I'm about to do you a favor, give you a little behind-the-scenes action on what happens when you're putting together a television show. I know everybody thinks, Jesse, you're so smart and handsome. I'm sure you just sit down and just roll out an amazing show every day. Well, I mean, a lot of that's true. But the truth of the matter is you do have to have some coordination with your people who work on the show with you. You just do. You have to gather video. You have to gather audio. You have to gather things for the stories you like. We call them elements. So this was an actual conversation I had today with my producer. I would like to get the video of Joe Biden saying kids touched his leg. Producer tells me, I saw that. That's a funny parody, but we can't use it. Me, no, it's real. Him, there's no way on earth that's real. Ladies and gentlemen, the video I'm about to show you is not one of those hilarious bad lip reading things. It's not a parody. It's not a deep fake. It's not something some clever little dude came up somewhere in his mom's basement on his computer. What you're seeing, this person speaking, is the leading candidate by a mile to be the Democrat nominee for President of the United States of America. On my life, he said this. Go.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what.
Okay, we're just going to move on from that. That's something. Well, nevertheless, don't let a bad little speech or a bad moment in a speech get you down, Joe. Everybody gets down from time to time. The bottom line is the Joe Biden campaign is moving full speed ahead, and they are ready to go after every single voting demographic in the United States of America, including especially the younger generation. You see, you know Joe Biden's going to do well with the older folks because he's really old. But the truth is he needs to bring in some younger voters, some middle-aged voters. So Joe, he has a strategy for that. Check out this new campaign slogan.
We're going to go on a 660-mile trip across the state.
No malarkey.
I'm ready. Let's go, Joe!
Can we show the full screen of the bus again? I just want to see just the bus. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not made up. I swear to you it's not made up. Again, similar to the conversation I had with my producer this morning, I actually showed that picture to my wife when that came out on Saturday, and she said, ha ha ha, which one of your friends did that? Like she thought one of my friends did a Photoshop of it. That is not a Photoshop, people. Look at it. Breathe it in. That is real. The No Malarkey Tour, a statement that he not only came up with, a statement he's so proud of that he had printed on the side of his campaign bus. That the No Malarkey Tour. Well, Joe Biden really modernizing with the phrases from the 1920s. And in case you thought it couldn't get any worse for old Uncle Joe, well, he had his wife out there on the campaign trail with him. I believe this was this weekend. And look, this happens. Candidates from time to time will attempt to humanize themselves. You know, you want to be Joe family man. So you bring the wife and kids up. Look, I ran for office before. I did the same thing too. Bring up the wife, kiss the kids. Hey, look, I'm a dad. I swear I'm not a monster. Well, Joe Biden's wife got up on stage and gave a little speech, and she made the horrible mistake of letting her finger get a little bit too close to old Uncle Joe's mouth, at which time he leaned down and sucked on her finger in public. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand what kind of human being their first instinct would do something like that. Look, and I'm not here to shame anybody for what they do. That's your call. But people, in all seriousness, this is not a campaign that is going to be able to beat President Donald Trump. It's just not. You can be the biggest Trump hater in the world, and that's fine. You don't have to wear anybody's pajamas. Joe Biden is currently in the lead. I thought Elizabeth Warren was going to take him, but the polls continue to be strong for Joe Biden across the states. He's not only in the lead, he's in a comfortable lead over the rest of the field. That means as it stands right now, it is very likely that that man is going to be the Democrat nominee for president. And Joe Biden is just not ready for prime time. He's not. And here's the sad part for Joe Biden, from his perspective, he never was. People oftentimes think somebody rises up to a position and they're worthy of that position, but that's not the case. Sometimes, a lot of people, they just kind of fall upwards. They trip backwards and land themselves promotions. It happens all the time. And don't forget, that is exactly what happened to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a no-name senator, as no-name as a U.S. senator could possibly be. He's been in the Senate since Thomas Jefferson was president. He never made any national splash, never made any national news, had a brief embarrassing run for president some time ago where he got something like 2%, but he's never been a national figure, never been a leading Democrat figure. But Barack Obama runs for president, catches lightning in a bottle, finds himself the Democrat nominee. Barack Obama had a resume thinner than a supermodel and decided he needed to add something to it. What he needed was a lot of experience, especially foreign policy experience, and he needed a white guy. And as we've seen time and time again, Joe Biden may be the whitest person on the planet next to Elizabeth Warren. So Barack Obama brings in Joe Biden and says, Joe, just don't talk too much. Just be my vice president. And he was vice president for 8 years, but that didn't change who Joe Biden was. A relatively milquetoast, backbench U.S. senator with a habit of sticking his foot in his mouth a lot. And the fact that Barack Obama helped him rise to be vice president of the United States for 8 years, well, that didn't change the leopard spots. Joe Biden's still an idiot. Joe Biden was never prime time. Joe Biden was never, ever, 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 ever meant to run for or be president of the United States of America. And you know what? There's actually nothing wrong with that. It would be horrible to be president of the United States of America. There's no job better than vice president. You have virtually no responsibilities on the taxpayer dime. You travel in luxury all across the world. Nice retirement check. That's a good life. Being president would suck, so he doesn't have to feel ashamed of that. But who should feel ashamed is everybody in Joe Biden's inner circle who gathered around him and whispered in his ear, Joe, you can beat him. Joe, you're so popular. Look, you were vice president. Some of those people were lying, and they knew they were lying. They wanted to leech some campaign dollars off of Joe Biden. Joe Biden's not ready for the big time. Joe Biden's campaign is ancient. It looks ancient. It's boring. Nobody shows up for the rallies. And his newest campaign slogan is no malarkey. Please, just enjoy this little video we prepared for you.
You know, I can still remember the very first sweets given to me by my grandfather. They were Werther's Original, and I was 4. I had a bit of trouble opening that shiny golden wrapper, but then, well, I'll never forget that first taste. Sweet and creamy and uncommonly good. I remember feeling I must be someone very special when my granddad gave me his wonderful butter candy. Well, now I'm the granddad. And what else would I give my little grandson but my Werther's Original? After all, he's someone very special too, you know.
I hope you enjoyed that latest campaign ad from the Joe Biden campaign. Coming up to talk about Biden and everyone else, Independent Women's Forum and friend of mine, Inez Stepman. Hang on. Joining me now, and I'm right regular and one of my favorite people in the world, Independent Women's Forum contributor to the Federalist as well, Inez Stepman. Inez, Joe Biden had a weekend of embarrassing gaffes. I know I don't have to update you on the weird sucking of the wife's finger in public, on the no malarkey tour bus, on the bizarre story about children rubbing his leg. I have a very difficult time even getting those words out. It feels very Michael Jackson-y to me. But Inez, here's what I don't get. I don't understand why Democrat primary voters at this point in time can't take a step back and realize there is no way this man is going to be president of the United States. I realize they may not like the alternatives, but he's not going to be able to hang with Donald Trump. As a primary voter, is it your first goal, if you're a Democrat, to beat Donald Trump? This guy can't do it.
It's interesting. The polls say the opposite, but I'm not convinced, like you, that his support is anything more than default. I think once he does not do as well in a couple of those early primaries, you're going to see that support really plummet. But I actually find a lot of these things endearing. I have to say, I'm no Joe Biden fan. I'm a conservative, but the stuff about his wife's fingers, I find it endearing. I think it's funny. But what it is making it really clear that the guy is old. He is just old in a way that Donald Trump, even though he's an old man as well, just doesn't seem as old. I mean, his tagline is malarkey, for gosh sake. Like, this is not a campaign that is even remotely in the 21st century. It seems like it's coming out in 1953. I find it endearing for that reason, but I suspect that that's not going to cut it in 2020.
You know what's funny is I actually agree with you. You and I disagree on some things, but I actually agree with you in that I find it genuine and endearing, but at the same time, I also realize it's not going to be effective, not for this day and age. In so many ways, Barack Obama changed the game in being revolutionary and being on social media and doing different things campaign-wise that were modern. And Donald Trump's campaign, to his credit, they did the same thing last time. They're doing the same thing this time. These are sharp campaigns run by younger people with new innovative ideas, and everything about Biden's campaign seems really freaking old. And I have always argued that that matters to people. And it's not an age thing. It's if you seem old. I think Hillary Clinton lost the presidency when they chucked her in the back of a van like an old love seat. And I think Joe Biden, for every mental gaffe he has out there and his stupid stories about fighting off corn pop with a straight razor at the pool, I think it makes people think this guy is just way out of the realm of reality now, and he should be golfing in Florida.
Yeah, I do think that that's the overwhelming. It's not just age. He seems outdated fundamentally, and not to make this too serious for a second, but we are in an age that is fundamentally different in politics from the last 30 to 40 years, certainly since the end of the Cold War. And a lot of people on both sides are angry about the state of America. So Joe Biden is kind of running this return to normalcy sort of campaign, no malarkey, seems like it's coming out of the 1950s. And I think even a decade ago, maybe, that would have been more appealing to Americans. But now you see record numbers of Americans, both on the right and the left, saying not just that things are headed in the wrong direction, but that our institutions are fundamentally broken, that there's something fundamentally broken in this country. Now, they disagree wildly about where we're broken and what to do about it. But I don't know that this return to normalcy campaign is going to be as popular as perhaps Joe Biden thinks it is, or his advisors think it's going to be. Like you, I find it endearing. I find it funny, but I don't think it really speaks to the moment of politics today. I think there's a fundamental disconnect between the brand of campaign that he's running and the way that voters feel right now, both on the right and the left. And I think that's why it's doomed to failure.
I agree. Now, let's change here. Let's assume that Joe Biden is not that strong, but right now, as you pointed out earlier, he's winning by default. Elizabeth Warren, I actually thought she was going to take it. She had all this momentum, and then this campaign appears to have really plateaued. I don't know whether it was Medicare for all or the fact she sounds like a dying turkey. Whatever it is, Elizabeth Warren is not working. Pete Buttigieg is not working. He just does not have the charisma to get it done. Is there a candidate that you think could rise? I have argued they should take a shot because Trump is such a political phenom. Whether you love him or hate him, the guy is. They should take a shot on one of the outside-the-box candidates. They should try Andrew Yang, who has insane ideas but seems really likable. Maybe try Tulsi Gabbard, who's a complete communist, but she's hot and that only helps. Shouldn't they try one of these candidates?
So I think Elizabeth Warren's greatest problem is that she's perceived as inauthentic. And I think that inauthenticity in this internet age that we just talked about, that Joe Biden's campaign really doesn't speak to, that inauthenticity of hers is really going to hurt her. And I think actually you're right. I think that somebody like Andrew Yang who is going to run a internet-based campaign, who is not going to be thrown by Donald Trump calling him mean names on Twitter, might have a better shot. Even though his policies are very far left, but at least the guy passes the likability test, right? He passes that basic test. He doesn't seem like a total jerk or somebody who's molded by campaign consultants, right? Which is what a lot of people like about Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, the guy seems like he's authentic. He seems like he's really himself, for better or for worse. I think sometimes for worse, but the guy seems authentic. And I think authenticity is something that's critical in an era where we're seeing these campaigns 24/7. We're seeing these people 24/7. People are forgiving of gaffes. They're forgiving of missteps. But what they're not forgiving of, I think, in this new age is seeming like you've been shaped by a bevy of consultants hired for $160,000 each, right? They want to see who you really are, what you really believe. And I think Elizabeth Warren fails on that count. I think it's why Bernie might be more popular, unfortunately, than we think he is going to be. And that's because he does seem like an authentic old socialist who's never dealt with the collapse of the USSR, right? But at least we believe he's really, he really believes what he's saying. I think that's a quality that most of the candidates on the field right now don't have on the left. And I think you named a couple of them. Tulsi seems authentic. Andrew Yang seems authentic. Bernie seems authentic. And I don't think that Joe Biden or Warren really have that in their arsenal. I think it's a really important thing in campaigns today.
Inez Stepman of the Independent Women's Forum, you did outstanding today. So did I.
Outstanding today.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Be good. Coming up, I'm going to show you the future. Hang on. From time to time, I like to offer up a public service to people. You see, it pays to look into your future now and then. We all need to set goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals. You know, you've heard all those motivational speakers. See where you want to be and then go there. Well, if you are a feminist, I'm about to show you where you're going to be at some point in time in your life, whether that be 60, 70, 80 years old. This little video, this is what you're going to be. Go ahead and roll it, guys.
In Arkansas, my brother was her lawyer. He was lawyer of the year. He represented Hillary. She gets to get a job. You got my niece, baby, say Chelsea. You guys don't have a clue what's going on in Arkansas. Come in and tell killing babies. You're nuts. Where's the evidence? My brother had her day. My brother protected Hillary. Hillary. Yes. My brother, I don't know what your brother did. Please
Look, that's how you end up. I know you don't want to hear that, but that's going to be you. You're going to have to put down your 9 cats at some point in time and waddle on down to the Donald Trump protest and start yelling at everybody with a voice like Mickey Mouse. And then I've seen this time and time again. I've been to these crazy people protests. No matter what they're saying, it just becomes natural to you. You turn it into a chant. You heard her, no, Hillary, no, Hillary. That's what's coming. So drop feminism now. Find yourself a man. Get rid of the cats. Cook dinner. Have some kids. Have a nice life. Don't be a feminist. We'll be back to have some more fun tomorrow here on I'm Right. I'll see you then.